So let's talk about how I got into motorcycles. See, I'm 43 right now. I started riding motorcycles when I was 17. I remember as a little kid, my dad told me that he had a motorcycle in college, and I just became enamored by them. He bought me this little car. It wasn't a car, it was a motorcycle, but the size of a Matchbox car, and it was so detailed that it had the you know, the front brake and the clutch levers, and it even had the gear shifter and the back brake and stuff. So I remember as a little kid talking to my dad and questioning him about what this lever did and what that lever did, and so it was like I was self-teaching before I even was old enough to drive, you know. But let's see, 16 came around. My first vehicle was a Mustang. Learned how to drive stick. I used to steal it all the time before I was 16. I knew where my parents left the keys, and used to take it out. And so I pretty much self-taught how to drive a manual. So I think that was a benefit for when it came time for the motorcycle. My parents didn't support the fact that I had an interest in a motorcycle, and at the time I didn't have a job. So I made friends. This is a kind of funny story. I made friends with a guy that owned a tanning salon, right? And he had a Heritage Softail, Harley Davidson Heritage Softail. This is slow traffic. He ended up buying a custom chopper, right? So he asked me if I wanted to ride his Heritage Softail. So I, of course, said, hell yes, I want to ride it. So the first bike I rode was, I think it was a 95 or a 96 Heritage Softail. Here I am, 17 years old, and I got a heel shifter and you know, a 750, 800 pound bike that I'm riding, and I'm like, this is awesome, you know. So he lets me take it out several days, and I talked to him, and I'm like, I really want a bike, but I don't have credit or anything built up at this time. And he's like, well, why don't you work for me, you know, at the tanning salon? And I'm like, okay. And what 17-year-old boy wouldn't want to work at a tanning salon where mostly girls are? And I'm like, deal. So we go and look at motorcycles, and I settled on a I don't remember the year. It was, I think, early 2000s. It was a 600 Honda Shadow, and I remember that bike like it was yesterday. It was so awesome. Got my first bike, rode it home from the shop, and we went through a park and just kind of getting acquainted with it, trying to figure out how to steer it, and you know, all the stuff that comes along with a new motorcycle. So I kept that for about a year or so. I had to sell it. I sold it to a buddy. I needed the money. So after I got out of school, I got back into motorcycles, and my next purchase was I believe it was a 2002. It was used. It was a 2002 Sportster Custom, and I think I bought that in 2005, 2006. It was a 1200cc Sportster Custom, and the thing was so tricked out, man. The guy that I got it from did just about everything possible to it. It had chrome everywhere. It was black with chrome, and the reason why I bought that was my neighbor at the time, he had a night train, Harley Davidson night train, and I had considered buying a Buell, but at the time I felt like I would be bastardized, and it was stupid for me to even think this, because I wish I would have gone with a Buell. It was the 9SXBX. It had the translucent tank. It was blue and gray, and it just, I fell in love with that sound. So of course I ended up buying the Sportster and not the new Buell, but I didn't want to spend $15,000 on a full-size Harley. You know, I didn't want to do it, so that's why I bought the Sportster. Well, almost a year into owning the Sportster, I went out and bought a brand new Dyna Fat Bob. It was a 96 cubic inch 1584cc bike, and I tricked it out. I powder coated it, put ape hangers on it. I had 21-inch apes on it. Within the first month of owning that Fat Bob, I stripped it down. The only thing that was left was the frame, the motor, and the transmission. I mean, I broke down the wheels, the wheel bearings, everything, and I sent it off to the powder coater, and I had it powder coated gray. So the main color of the bike was gloss black, and then they had the gray emblems on the side, and I powder coated it. What they called at the time was black chrome, which was like a pewter gray, like a dark gray. It looked so sick. And I just did a color scheme on the Harley Fat Bob. If you guys want to see pictures of it, just ask, comment in the comments below, and I'll show you pictures of my Fat Bob. But so I own the Fat Bob for let's see, 2008, 2018, 2019. Yeah, I think, yeah, okay. So I rode that off and on, and I found myself doing what the Harley guys do, the bar hopping and drinking, and I wasn't about that anymore. You know, I did that for 10 years, and I kind of grew up, and I started looking at a different bike to kind of get me out of that scene, and that's when I landed on the 2018 MT-07. So the day I purchased that, the MT-07, I told myself I'm not going to bars anymore. Well, I'll go to bars, but I'm not going to drink anymore. I started wearing gear, at least something with CE protection. I'm looking at a two-piece race suit, so if any of you guys have any suggestions or recommendations, please comment in the comments below. But yeah, so the MT-07, got that bike, instantly fell in love with that sound that I talked about earlier with the Buell. The Yamaha MT series has that sound, and the bike is just well balanced, even for being a 700. It's any of them. I can't speak personally on the MT-09, but I can speak on the 07 and the 10, and they feel well balanced, not top heavy, very nimble. Throw it around, do whatever you want with it. So I did a bunch of stuff to the MT-07, and I had to I had to get rid of it because it was just too small of a bike to bring my girlfriend on. It was not comfortable for her. So I hated to sell it, but I ended up selling it, and went out and bought a Triumph Tiger 800 XRX, which is not the base model, but you know, it had some features like cruise control. It had different, like 4 different riding modes. It had the heated grips. It was a nice bike. It was the first bike I ever owned myself that had a fairing on it, and I didn't realize how much a fairing actually helps. Like, all my bikes have been somewhat like a naked bike. So I was like, yeah, this is pretty nice, you know. I bought that in the end of 2018, at the beginning of 19. Can't really remember specifics. But anyways, I liked the bike. The bike was comfortable. The pillion seat for the passenger was bigger. She was more comfortable on it. So, and it was still a torquey bike. I think it had 100 horse, you know. Yeah, so I kept that for a couple years. I didn't put many miles on it. I think when I sold it, I had like 2,400 miles on it. I mean, I put more on that MT-07 in under a year than I did that Triumph Tiger. I just, you know, when you connect with a motorcycle, it's like you keep looking back at it as you're walking into the store. It's like you can't get enough of it. You feel like one with it. Man, this bike is freaking awesome. Yeah, so I had to ultimately get rid of the Triumph Tiger, and I was looking strictly at a MT10.